Hi, everyone. Hope we all had a great week. We're here in Helena for week 6 is Live with Your Lobbyist. So week 6 was an exciting week on a couple of different fronts. We had quite a few bills. And on top of that, we had our MFBF calling on the Capitol on the 12th and 13th, Tuesday and Wednesday. And Wednesday marked Farm Bureau's official 100-year birthday. So we stacked that day full of celebration. We started in the morning with breakfast with your legislators, and then the governor at 8:30 gave his official happy birthday to Montana Farm Bureau and read the proclamation that he had put together for us. So that was incredibly exciting. And then our members got to speak with Mike Honeycutt, the Department of Livestock, Department of Health and Human Services, Attorney General Tim Fox. We had quite the lineup that day for our members. And then we got to sit on the House floor and the Senate floor and receive the House and Senate proclamations, which was super exciting. We had all of the legislators stand up and congratulate Farm Bureau on 100 years of advocacy. So it was an exciting week for us. If you're just tuning in, let us know you're watching. Let us know where you're watching from. How's the weather?
Good morning, Allison. Thanks for joining. And just to add on to what Liv said real quickly about our centennial celebration, obviously we've got a full year of activities planned, but this was really the kickoff because February 13th is the official 100th birthday of the Montana Farm Bureau. And it really was fitting that we got to celebrate that here in Helena, because when Farm Bureau was originally established, it took an act of the state legislature and the signature of the governor at the time to pass Senate Bill 30, which provided more funding because Farm Bureau was originally established as a function of the Extension Service. So Senate Bill 30 approved the establishment of county farm bureaus around the state and allowed more funding to provide more extension agents in more counties around the state to help start Farm Bureau, county farm bureaus, which were the community development and grassroots voice of the Extension Service. And as we say, the rest is history, but it was such a neat little historical tie to be able to celebrate this here in Helena, and so fitting to be able to do it during the legislature as well.
Yes. So there's your history lesson of the day. Well, 100 years later, we're still advocating, so we are going to touch on a few of the bills that we advocated on this week. The first one that I worked on this week was heard on Tuesday in House Natural Resources. It's House Bill 286, introduced by Representative Alan Redfield out of the Livingston area. And this bill clarifies that the state does not have an ownership interest in water that is diverted, developed on private land. So why is this clarification needed? In the last year, the department has started claiming partial ownership of water rights that are located on private land and then diverted onto state land, aka a lease. So we have a few members that have had this happen where they receive a notification that the state is now a partial owner of their water right, even though that water right is located, diverted, developed on private land. So we not only see this as an extreme violation of private property rights, but a disincentive for our landowners to be using and putting water on their state leases. So it doesn't benefit us, it doesn't benefit the state. So we supported this bill. We do foresee it becoming amended in that committee, but we're hoping to see it come out of House Natural Resources this week or next week. So another one that we worked on, and please, if you have any questions, comment away and we will answer while we're going through these. Another bill that we worked on yesterday is House Bill 431, introduced by Representative Zach Brown out of Bozeman. And this bill gives qualified young farmers and ranchers who have gone to a post-secondary school, and it allows for student debt assistance. Our policy believes in a hand up, not a handout. We don't believe in loan forgiveness. We believe in student debt assistance, and this bill does that. So when I started working on this bill, I reached out to a couple of my peers because I graduated from the Ag Biz program at MSU. And believe it or not, the intention for most of them was to return back to the farm or ranch, and a lot of them did not do that. And that's just because egg commodities are low, beef prices are low, and with student debt to pay off, they decided that it just wasn't productive for them to head back to the farm or ranch. So this bill allows the department, through the Grow Through Agriculture program, to offer student debt assistance to those qualified young farmers and ranchers that are wanting to return to production agriculture. So we did support that with a few proposed amendments. While we support it, we definitely want to make sure that we are not diverting funds from Grow Through Agriculture, especially not a specific amount. So if they're married to the 100,000, they need to find an additional 100,000 for that program, or they need to just give the department the ability to administer those funds so that they can go through all of their applications and see where that money is best appropriately used. So.
Yeah, and as Liv said, it was a very busy week for us here in the Capitol as we celebrated the Farm Bureau's 100th birthday on the 13th. We had a great group of members in town to help us not only celebrate the birthday, but to participate in calling on the Capitol as well. And it was a busy week in committee hearings. We started the week off on Tuesday, or I started my week off, I guess, on Tuesday afternoon in the Senate Agriculture Committee with Senate Bill 206, which is being carried by Senator Chelcie. And this bill has to do with the marketing and labeling of country of origin on beef in Montana retail establishments, otherwise called the Country of Origin Placarding Act. So Montana Farm Bureau supports country of origin labeling that benefits U.S. livestock producers and is an industry-led solution. And we opposed this bill because it does not accomplish the task of efficiently or effectively labeling country of origin in a way that's beneficial not only to retailers but also to the industry as a whole. And we communicated that with the sponsor beforehand, and actually really want to say a big thank you to Senator Chelcie for being willing to have those conversations. And that's all part of the policy process. Is we will likely never come to a compromise on this bill. We're going to oppose it and do our best to keep it in committee. But the senator, and even with that knowledge, the senator is very open to discussions with us about what this needs to look like for our industry in the future. And essentially what Senate Bill 206 does is put regulation on retailers in the state of Montana to label or placard, so a sign, that's what they mean by placard, is to post a placard in the meat counter labeling meat one of three ways. If they can definitively say that it was born, raised, and processed in the USA, that's what the placard can say. If they know that it was processed in the USA, they may post a placard saying it was processed in the USA. And if they don't know any above, then it is processed outside of the USA. So the problem with this is that without any sort of federal mandate on country of origin requirements, this information is not easily attainable for our retail associations or retail establishments, which are oftentimes the small family-owned grocery stores across much of Montana, and that are there to serve a purpose for those communities. So we disagree with putting the burden on those businesses to find information that isn't available to them. Secondly, this bill issues fines and potential jail time to those retailers if they're unable to comply, which is ridiculous in our opinion, to be brief. And another big concern with this bill is it gives rulemaking authority and enforcement of the program to Department of Labor. Department of Livestock as well as Department of Public Health and Human Services are two agencies that already have extensive labeling and meat inspection programs and provide the compliance and follow through businesses need in that arena. So we're a little bit confused as to why Department of Labor has been looped into this. This bill would require an additional $500,000 over the biennium, so about $250,000 a year, and 2 new employees for Department of Labor to administer. So we question the need for that when we have 2 other agencies who already have these established programs and resources available, and just are curious. We don't know why this is going to Department of Labor. And finally, our biggest concern with this bill is the fact that it carries a pretty lengthy and detailed legal review note. And there's a lot of issues raised regarding violation of, Montana would be in violation of the Supremacy Clause because we have no federal guidance on country of origin. And we would also be in violation of the Federal Meat Labeling Act. And so that opens us up to a lot of unknowns, potentially seeking resolution in the court system, which again is not going to do anything to benefit small Montana businesses or Montana cattle ranchers. So we don't see this bill as the appropriate fix. We appreciate the conversation, but we also recognize that this is a conversation that needs to happen on a national platform, and this bill is not going to help get us there. It does have information in it about the labeling of cell-cultured meat. You probably heard last week on our update, we talked a lot about Representative Redfield's Real Meat Act, and that bill is specific to the labeling of cell-cultured meat. It's something we've been working on throughout the process with Representative Redfield, and that piece of legislation is several steps ahead of Senate Bill 206 in the process. So we're supporting that bill because it's specific to the labeling of those cell-cultured products and doesn't attempt to blur the lines between a cell-cultured product labeling issue and a country of origin placarding issue. It was also a really busy week for wildlife discussions here in the Capitol. Yesterday afternoon, I testified on 2 bills in Senate Fish and Game. One of them was a resolution to Congress, SJ6, which is being carried by Senator Mike Cuff, and is a resolution asking Congress to continue moving forward with the process of delisting the grizzly bear in Montana. That's something that we're very supportive of. Of course, we've seen grizzly bears continue to expand their range and their habitat far beyond the identified ecosystems that they've been that we're attempting to recover them in. So, of course, that's a good sign from a recovery aspect, but also is a relatively bad sign for those of us across much of rural Montana that are bearing the burden of living with the increased numbers of these predators on the landscape. So we supported that resolution and will be hoping to further that along to Congress to ask them to continue in the process of delisting the grizzly bear from the Endangered Species Act. Secondly, in Senate Fish and Game yesterday was Senate Bill 185 being carried by Senator Mike Phillips. And this bill proposes to prohibit the hunting or trapping of wolves in 2 of the hunting districts surrounding Yellowstone National Park that fall within the borders of Park County. And, it was interesting to have both of these bills in the same hearing yesterday because we stood up and supported sending the resolution to Congress, and then we heard a lot of testimony from opponents arguing that these decisions about wildlife management must not be made on political or social pressures and must rely on the biology and the science behind the issues that will establish whether or not this animal's ready to be delisted. And flip the page to a hearing for Senate Bill 185 on wolf hunting, and we hear a bunch of supporting testimony saying that these animals are of social value to our culture and we must be empathetic to naive wildlife, and management decisions need to be based on that. So it was an interesting turn of events, if you will, in the committee hearing, and actually something that I brought up in my testimony too, to say, this issue is no different than delisting the grizzly bears. And if there's no biological or scientific reason justifying why we need to ban wolf hunting or trapping around Yellowstone National Park, we should not tolerate these decisions being made due to political or social pressures. An additional concern with this piece of legislation is that it establishes essentially another large buffer zone around the perimeter of Yellowstone National Park into Park County. These 2 hunting districts encompass nearly 600 square miles of Park County that would now be prohibited to any wolf management. And we're very much opposed to establishing buffer zones around the perimeter of Yellowstone National Park that just allows wildlife management decisions that the park is making to be imposed on the state of Montana, and that's not something we support. So we were there in opposition to Senate Bill 185. And finally, on the wildlife front yesterday, we were testifying in the House Agriculture Committee on House Bill 332. And House Bill 332 is not a new legislative issue. It's something that we have worked on extensively for a number of years. And this bill proposes to allow county commissioners to approve any translocation of wild bison into their counties. This is something that has been a kind of a constant circulating discussion among different stakeholder groups for a long time. So this bill does a great job of really outlining very specific parameters. There are very explicit criteria in the bill which would allow a county commission to either deny or allow the translocation of bison into counties. There are specific exemptions in bill language, making it clear that this law does not apply to tribal entities and tribal governments who are obtaining bison within tribal or reservation boundaries. And so we base this on criteria that those animals must be certified brucellosis free, and that you find that this translocation of these bison is not going to threaten any public health or safety, and that the county determines that having these bison in their area is consistent with their county growth plan. So we were there to support that. It's something that just provides another avenue of good local control and allowing county commissioners to be involved in those conversations. So that was House Bill 332, which was in House Agriculture yesterday. We're probably going to be seeing a lot of these bills start to move really quickly. So next week is the last full legislative week before we enter transmittal week and get close to that transmittal deadline. So depending on how many Saturdays the legislative body works, the date may shift a day or two, but essentially next Friday, the 22nd, I believe, or the 23rd, is the final day to introduce a bill, to have it successfully have a committee hearing, be through the floor session, and transferred to the alternate house. And the transmittal deadline, like I said, may change a day or two, but right now is scheduled for, I believe, the 2nd, which would be the following Saturday. So next week is shaping up to be another busy week, and we'll probably start seeing bills move really quickly. It's not unheard of to, at this point in the session, have a hearing on a bill and then have the committee to immediately turn around and go into executive session on that bill, because if they don't get them kicked out of committee and scheduled for the floor, chances are they're not going to make it. So we're really down to the wire here. Next week we'll probably have another pretty extensive update for you about those things, and we'll keep you posted, but we're really kind of getting down to the wire as far as the introduction of new bills and having things heard before transmittal.
To answer Allison's question, Caleb gets Husband of the Year for not only sending Chelcie flowers, but sending Chelcie flowers with an audience. So those flowers are for Chelcie.
Yeah. I mean, they were supposed to show up yesterday, but that's neither here nor there. So, yeah. Thanks, hon.
Any other questions?
Yeah, thank you guys all for tuning in with us. Let us know if you have any questions about any of this. Let's see, not next week, but the week after, we're excited to have our county presidents and our Farm Bureau Board of Directors in town for a few more days of meetings. So they're going to be in town during transmittal week. So we expected it to be pretty busy and to be a lot of stuff going on and taking place.
All right, guys, if we don't have any more questions, we will tune off. We've got a couple more mini hearings this afternoon. So thanks, guys.
Have a great week. Bye.